Hey, what's up, man? I'm making this video for you. This is the Mesa that I just recently dug out from the garage and did some cleaning on it. I had been playing on this old car when I got down here for a long time, and with this coronavirus nonsense, I went ahead and pulled this thing out of storage. Um, I mean, it doesn't do a whole lot of pretty cleans. It really does not. I mean, you can put it on the channel one and you get a decent clean signal, but that's not really what this thing's made for. It's kind of a one-trick pony. Um, but I'll go over like the signal chain and stuff in a minute. I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a sound sample. I'm playing through this Ibanez. It's got some. They're pretty hot, but they're passive pickups. The Marzios, I think. So it's got a pretty good, in my opinion, it's got a pretty good overdriven sound. I mean, that's kind of what Mesas are made for. You know, I had a hard time getting this thing to sound the way that it does, and I'll go over some of that with you. Um, this is a Schecter with some EMG X's active pickups in it. So this thing is a lot more like a dual wreck than it is a triple. When I bought it, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. It's overkill, 150 watt amplifier. I didn't need it, but it was a good deal. I bought it at Guitar Center used. It's like, to me, I've had it probably 15 years, so it's, you know, maybe a 20-year-old amplifier or something like that. But so signal chain, I've got other crap up here, but the only thing that's actually in the signal path on the front end of the amp is that cheap old Behringer compressor that I talked to you about once before. And I've got it going through the effects loop. I got it going through a little miniaturized version of Pictronics Philosopher's Stone into BBE's Sonic Stomp. You know, I've used this thing on a lot of different rigs, and for some setups it sounds really good, and for other things it sounds terrible. But in this thing it sounds pretty good. It can add a lot of clarity with this process knob, and using the low contour setting, you can really kind of round out your your low end. All in all, I'm happy with the way that this thing sounds, but like stock, it's really not too impressive. It's got a really fizzy character to it, unless if I read about this trick online, you can take just a single like instrument cable and connect the send and return of the effects loop, just an empty cable without even going in any pedals, and it really helps refine the character of the sound of the amplifier. I know that's strange, but without doing that, like a lot of people say, like, oh, it makes it sound like a can of bees. And a quick fix for that is just to run a line out and back into the effects loop, and it kind of cures that. I don't have to worry about that because I actually use my effects loop. I'm probably going to get a reverb pedal here in the near future and throw that on the maybe as the last little element of my signal chain there. I used to have a reverb pedal, but I don't know what the heck I've done with it. So to give you a little bit of a background about this amp, I used to, when I first bought it, it had like the American bottle tubes in it, the 6L6s. And I decided to experiment, and I got some EL34s, and there's a little switch in the back where you can change it so that it self-biases from like 6L6 or EL34s. And I started reading about the KT77 tubes being used. I think I read an interview with like Kurt Hammond of Metallica or something like that years ago that said that he used it as a substitute for EL34s. And so I got a set of them, and I just got 2 of them. And first and foremost, I should say, like, one of the first things I did, Matt, was I removed the whole pair of power tubes. So there's 3 sets, a total of 6 power tubes in this thing when it's in 150 watt mode. But you can just literally pull the 2 outside sockets, the one on the furthest left and the one on the furthest right, and remove them, and it reduces it down to a 100 watt amplifier, essentially a dual rectifier at that point in time, more or less. But I took it a step further, and I took out another pair of the power tubes, and I supplemented them with a pair of KT77s. And that really did a lot to clarify the low end. It really did a lot to round it off, and it subdued it a little bit more. And what I did most recently, since when I just plugged it in like 2 or 3 days ago, was I have, over the years, I accrued a pair of these little like socket adapters made by a company called VHT. They're called Yellow Jackets. And they allow you to supplement different tubes into different sockets. It doesn't really matter. It auto biases, allegedly. And I've never had any problem with them. They've never blown up an amplifier or anything, knock on wood. I've tried them in a couple different things. So I left the KT77s in their sockets, and I took out the other pair of EL34s, and I replaced them with the Yellow Jacket adapters. And then I put in the much lower wattage EL84s versions of the EL34s. Now, those are the little power tubes that you see like in the 18 watt Marshalls and stuff like that. So you got the great big old bottles that you see in the big amps. And then I'm going to see if I can find you. Well, you can kind of get an idea, maybe. So this is an EL84. It's wrapped in bubble wrap, but as you can see, it's just about the size of my thumb. It's not much bigger than a preamp tube, really. So that's what I've got in one set of the power tube sockets, and the KT70s are still in there. So it's a pretty odd mix. I've never heard of anybody doing it quite like that with this amplifier, having that kind of unorthodox power tube section. It's probably not good for it, I don't know. But they say that those Yellow Jackets do like kind of more or less auto bias themselves so that they'll work in any kind of substitution or whatever. And you might have noticed it over here. This is just a power attenuator. It knocks 12 dB off the amp. So I've already got the wattage kicked down. It's probably running around somewhere between 45 and 55 watts, if I had to guess. And then I've got that attenuator slapped on there, so I can play it at a pretty like bedroom volume. I could turn it down a lot from even where I had it just for this recording. So yeah, will it do Foo Fighters? Yeah, for sure it will. Does it clean up nicely? Not really. But it's got a reasonable amount of clarity for as much overdrive as it can bring into onto the plate. In terms of digital modeling, like what you're doing, you're probably better off because I think that the digital controls are a lot more responsive than the analog controls. Like my master volume's got a point where it goes up, and you get about like the 25% marker on the dial, and if you just touch it like the littlest bit, like the volume like quadruples. And I don't know if it's just a flawed potentiometer or whatever, or if I should spray some kind of air in there to try to blow it out or what. It doesn't bother me, but that's the one benefit of having digital interface and digital controls is you don't have all those unpredictable nuances and stuff like that you're going to come across with the real thing. Well, look, man, I hope school's going good for you and everything. Yeah, I'm not normally this sharing, I guess you would call it. This I'm still working. I work at nights. I work for the newspaper, the Fort Myers News Press. I work in the warehouse, taking newspapers in and everything. So I'm not like totally stir crazy like the rest of my family, but I think everybody's kind of got extra time on their hands. Certainly not going to school, saving a tremendous amount of time and everything. So I'm able to do some stuff like this, and it was a lot of fun doing it. And I'm looking forward to playing on it more. I'm going to be getting a reverb pedal for it real soon, so I'm looking forward to that. I want to get something that's got like some really like maybe like some cathedral reverb settings or some kind of hall settings. See what I can get it to sound like, because it is a little bit on the dry side for my taste. But yeah, man, this video's getting long. I'll talk to you later, buddy. Have a good one, man.